Now on 4, On the Edge strikes an opening chord with Buddy Guy.
Improvisation, the most widely practiced of all musical activities, is probably the least recognized or understood. Vague descriptions like making it up as you go along or playing off the top of your head give no idea of the pervasiveness and the power of improvisation in music. Perhaps the air of mystery that surrounds it is inevitable. Improvisation is to do with change, adjustment, development, elusive ideas. It isn't any one style of music. It doesn't belong to East or to West. But it is the creative force in these and many other musics. It's present everywhere, in the most complex musical designs and in the earliest attempts at music making.
That's the melody as sung.
Having played a favorite folk tune, Jerry Garcia improvises on it.
Simple. When I started playing the guitar, the person I played with was a cousin of mine who had actually had band experience and stuff in school, and we both got guitars, little electric guitars from pawn shops. We were both I was 15, I think he was 17. We started banging around together, playing around and learning stuff. And he's the first person who I ever heard use the word improvisation. Improvise, you know. What does that mean? I mean, just make it up as you go along. Oh, what a great idea, you know. So that was my first exposure to it, which also corresponds with my beginning to actually play the guitar. So for me, you know, I don't know, I don't believe that I could play without improvising on some level. That is to say, that I don't plan ahead. I could never bring myself to actually learn something note for note and play it that way more than once. It's maybe deeply rooted anti-authoritarianism. You know, I don't know what it is, but it's something in my personality just won't allow me to do it.
Grateful Dead came together as a rock band in the 60s from the Bay Area of California. They play a synthesis of American music, including jazz, folk, and blues. Basically a touring band, they see their audience of Deadheads more as extended family than rock music consumers, almost part of the band itself. One reason the Dead commands such loyalty is that they perform a different program each night. And within that program, each number is altered through instrumental invention every time it is performed.
If you say, what we're doing here is we're inventing this as we go along, and you are involved in this experience, and it's never going to be this way again. This is it for this particular version of it. There's value to that, and I think our audience is the proof of that. These are people who come back to every performance. If we do 10 days somewhere, a lot of them will be back every night. They know that it's going to be different every night. The band that I'm in, remember, I mean, everybody has the same disease that I have, which is the inability to do something exactly the same way twice. Sometimes it drives you nuts, you know. I mean, if you're composing something and you feel that there's a delicate little interaction that you want to hear, and you always want to hear it, forget it. You know, it doesn't happen in the Grateful Dead, but other stuff does, which is much more wonderful. But you have to be prepared to relinquish a certain amount of your ego involvement with it. You can't, you know, it doesn't help to think of that you're doing real great. You know, it's not necessarily, and it also doesn't help. A lot of times, too, this is another interesting thing. My perception of what's a good night for us may be totally different from everybody else's perception. The audience sometimes has a great night listening to us struggle, feeling that we never quite get together. Sometimes we struggle the whole night without ever feeling like we've really agreed on anything. And sometimes the audience loves that. For them, sometimes that's the best stuff. So reporting is difficult. This starts to bleed over into aesthetics, like what's good music and what isn't. And it starts to get into the world of totally random observations. We do our best playing publicly. We don't do our best playing privately, which is backwards from a lot of musicians. There aren't very many bands, certainly, that play rock and roll where improvisation is a large part of what they do. What you have now, masquerading as rock and roll, is in reality safe, popular music. That's largely the work of producers and less the work of musicians. The music business is basically economics. It's basically the thing of when you make a record, you want players that don't make mistakes. You don't necessarily want players that take chances. You want players that don't make mistakes. So because economically that means less time in the studio, you get what you want on the record, and it's, you know, it's safe and it's perfect. And that's kind of been the thrust of music production and popular music, which has sort of co-opted rock and roll. Our audience, I think, illustrates that there's a lot of people who really want a musical experience rather than to be performed at. To my mind, most of performance stuff is really show business. It's entertainment in the sense that there's the passive audience and there's the active performer. And the performer has a show, and they do the show in the same sense that a play is a show. And while it may change, it may vary slightly from performance to performance, it's pretty much the same thing. And that's what most performers gear up to do. That's what their management encourages them to do, and that's what the music business as a whole encourages them to do. So there's really no opening in there. You know, the music business, which has almost nothing to do with music, doesn't encourage improvisation, doesn't encourage taking chances, and it doesn't encourage music which is experimental in nature. It just doesn't. I used to listen to early blues, Muddy Waters, and all these Chicago guys. You could get half a dozen young city kids playing the same notes on their instruments, but there's something really scary about early blues records, and it's because each one of those guys who's playing like a two-bar pattern is like a guy that's maybe murdered half a dozen people and, you know, spent 10 years in jail and is, you know, used to packing a gun or a razor, and these guys are mean, these are killers, you know. So, I mean, a killer playing the blues has a little more content than a kid from Palo Alto, you know what I mean? Music is simple, but the emotional power of it is incredible. You know, so there's something about who it is that's doing the playing, quite apart from ability. And then there's ability. I mean, there's also something really wonderful about hearing a really, really accomplished musician playing just beautifully, you know, making up, you know, just improvising and flowing.
By far the best guitar player alive is how Buddy Guy is described by Eric Clapton, not least for his intense and extended guitar breaks. Buddy had a hard apprenticeship when he first came to Chicago in the 50s, backing Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf. Today he hires his own bands, which he never rehearses. There's no script or running order for Buddy Guy. He plays how he feels.
Walking around on two legs. Yes, I think I smell it right in my house, baby. Yeah. Honey, I believe he walking around on two legs. like this, just like I need a hole in my head. I stayed out late last night. I thought I'd make it home and everything would be all right. I stayed out late last night. Woo! Lord, and I thought everything would be all right. You know, when I came home this morning, all we did is fuss and fight.
I think I could play it if I go to it, because I play what I feel, and I play with the feeling, and I'm self-taught, and I play by ear. And whatever strikes my mind or brains or whatever it is to do this, I do this. And when I do it with my best. And we have different ways of expressing the blues. Some people can talk it, some can sing it, and some can play it. Some can moan it, some can groan it. And throughout my whole career, I have lived the blues, I have slept the blues, and we have a way of explaining it through song.
Can we do it? Can we, so what?
Junior Wells has played with Buddy Guy on and off for 30 years. For many people, they are Chicago blues.
Let's go home.
I think it's almost impossible to play the same at all times, because when I pick the guitar up to play for an audience, I go after the audience. And what I did last night may not reach them tonight, to make them get that jump in the seat or show me that big smile. So I have to sit there and say, it's like a prize fighter. You know, the guy fights this guy this style because he know how to get to him this style, but the next guy you got to change because this guy done figured that out. So I don't want anybody to figure out my playing before I go out there. So I like to keep a surprise back there waiting for him. And a lot of that stuff, I would say 95% of that stuff come to me. As soon as I walk out on stage and look out there in the audience face, I see myself saying, you got to go do something to make them listen to you.
sit in my dark room, tears rolling down my face. Lord, I sit right there, Lord, right there in my dark room, and they have tears rolling down my face. I don't see how you think I can go on. Lord, baby, I just can't live in this old place.
Chicago has been a focus for black music since early this century. Blues players migrated here from the southern states and developed the Chicago sound. First-generation migrants worked in the railways and stockyards, strictly on the other side of the tracks. But later generations of musicians have had the opportunity to broaden their horizons. Part of that broadening is the interactive computer music that George Lewis makes. A system evolved by George Lewis uses projected images designed by his collaborator Don Ritter, which are manipulated by a computer. The computer is activated by the music played, and it then selects sounds and images which are fed back to the performers. What they play as they improvise governs how the colors and images modulate on the screen.
We wanted to try to give anyone who came to the space the same kind of experience that we have as improvisers when we play with these machines, you see, to sort of, if we don't want to, I don't want to call it humanizing the machine, but to break up the fear and loathing aspect that comes with the computer, especially because the computer has been so oversold in this society. It's not like the way people think about computer music today, I think basically coming from pop music, where you push a button and a bunch of shit comes out, you know. Whereas with me, you sit there and you listen for things to happen, and you have influence over what happens, but you can't just push a button and make something happen. That's not how you play with people. That's not how you work with people in anything. You know, that's the sort of, I mean, the model for the push a button and get a programmed response is like, you know, the military or something. You know? Whereas with like freely improvised music, you got to give people their space. You have to listen to what they're doing. You got to try to figure out what's going on. And though the machine is sort of I'm trying to make the machine do that in some ways. Now, I'm not saying it's doing it on the same level as I am. See, that would be some sort of artificial intelligence or something like that. I don't think I want to say I'm doing that. It's more like adapting. You get it to adapt to the situation that it finds itself in. And sometimes it's successful, and sometimes it's wildly unsuccessful. And when you don't like, and that's dependent upon, of course, you in a way. You decide, because you got to play with it. But you see, the thing is, if it's not successful, you can't just say, okay, well, I want more of this, and there's like 200 parameters, you know. So instead of going through all that rigmarole, just start playing what you want. That way, you see if it'll work. What you hear before you hear the notes, before you hear the tones, what you hear is, what's the style of music here? What sort of, where is this music coming from? Who does it relate to, you know? Sometimes when I listen to an improviser play, you hear a lot. You hear like, how, you hear about how long they've been playing. Sometimes you can hear who they played with, who they studied with, you know, the type of things they're interested in. You can hear whether they're fearful, whether they're happy. You can hear all these amazing things. And then you can, with any one of those things that you detect in the music, non-verbally, you can sort of draw what I think of as rays of intentionality away from that. You can go just about anywhere. It's sort of a multi-dimensional net, N cube, if you like. You can go from any point to any other point.
George Lewis moved a long way from Chicago's South Side when he first studied philosophy at Yale and then computer music at IRCAM in Paris. A product of those years is the kalimboscope, which he developed with David Berman. Here again, a computer offers an interactive experience for the player. It produces images to complement the sounds triggered by the keys of an electronic mbira. It's the high-tech version of one of Africa's most popular musical instruments. Children are instructed in how to make their mbiras at a primary school in the countryside of Zimbabwe. Their teacher is keeping alive a way of instrument making that has survived for 1,000 years.
Vana, munoona tinotora zvinhu zvese tichingoita zvokuita. Hatina mari yokuti tinogona kutenga zvinhu izvi. Saka tinosevenzesa zvatinazvo zvatinenge tawana. Zvakaita semaplastic, hatina ganda rembudzi, aiwa, kuti tiite mubvuto. Saka tinoisa zvichiplastiki zvedu tichivhutira moto zvingova zvimwe chetezvo simbi dzedu dzichitsvukawo semasvukira adzingangoita kana tiine bvuto chaiyo. hatigone kuwana mari yakawanda yekuti tingatenge zvinhu izvi, asi tinoita ndozvatinenge tawana zvatinonhonga musango toita. The importance of the mbira is that it has been an instrument to keep us in connection with our spirits. It is a means, it has been a means of communication between the living and the dead. When the mbira instrument is played, it calls the spirits to come and talk to us, and that way we communicate. It has been like that ever since, and we have to follow what our forefathers left us. For example, when I am playing a tune in a certain rhythm, then one can come in keeping to the same rhythm, but either playing it faster or slower than what I'm doing. So that way easy trying to improvise. A good mbira player has got a lot of, improvisations in the mbira playing. He thinks of so many rhythms and so many variations to bring into the music. Whereas one who is not a very good mbira player, I would call him a rigid player. He's not flexible yet. And such a player cannot play for the spirits. They don't want it.
The children are enacting a spirit ceremony where they effect falling into trance. Ancestral spirit ceremonies are still a central force in the lives of their parents, and their teacher is subtly encouraging the children to follow in the ways of their ancestors. In the sparsely inhabited hills, close to the border with Mozambique, villagers prepare for an all-night spirit ceremony called a mbira. It will start on the evening of the full moon. Mbira is more than just a ceremony. It is a powerful statement of identity for the Shona people of Zimbabwe. The hosho, which are hollow gourd rattles, control the rhythm, while the mbira instruments, covered by resonators, link the earthbound to the spirit world. Their aim is to attract an ancestral spirit into the body of the medium, who has been asked to cure an illness that afflicts one of the family. These Shona believe all misfortunes arise through having offended the ancestors. So the family members have asked the medium to placate the angry spirit. Gradually, the sounds of the mbira put the participants into trance. But throughout the night, there are moments of quiet reflection when the spirits are encouraged to descend. So important are these ceremonies to the Shona that during the struggle for independence, the white authorities tried to outlaw them. The missionaries banned much mbira playing, equating it with forms of devil worship. The army imprisoned, even hanged, spirit mediums who offered help to the freedom fighters by giving them the support and authority of the ancestors during ceremonies like these. The mediums fed, protected, and guided them.
Wenyika wakanga wachuya zviro kwazvo tichibatana nawo tichiwabikira sadza werusununguko ndiwo atakanga tichionera nhamu yesei zvamunoona makoronga namakomo aya ndo dzakanga dziri dzimba dzatakanga tichihwanda vazhinji vedu vakaparara vashoma vakasara nemhaka yekuti vakanga vasingadi kuona vanobikira varwi venyika werusununguko vachivabikira kuti tive tingasununguka kusvika pari nhasi.
Today, there's a resurgence of Shona identity. It can be seen in rituals like this mbira.
In our society, no, mbira is not limited. Our music is not limited. You are not asked to play in a certain way. You can improvise in any way in our music. So now for these variations, you get the encouragement from the people, from the dancers. The way they dance, when you look at them, you enjoy it. And then you find yourself just playing the variations. They just come. I'll play the simplest song, which is Mahororo. So when I get more excited, when I get into the mood, I don't know how it happens. But most, we get these variations from the dancers, the way they stamp their feet. When we are looking at them, we enjoy what they will be doing. So from there, that's where we get the improvisations from.
The mbira players inspire the family to dance through the night and help identify the spirits. As the medium becomes possessed, her spirit is brought to water, a symbol of ancestral life. The spirit fights to take possession of the medium's body. It is a lengthy and painful process. Other, lesser mediums support her. The musicians have identified the spirit's favorite tune, so they vary and embellish it while the ancestor enters the medium. By this time, everyone is involved. Mbira music has more recently become part of the sounds of the city. In Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, a suburban beer hall houses an mbira contest. It features legendary performers of traditional music. The relationship between voice and mbira is always changing. Each performance by each artist is unique. Daiko is one of Zimbabwe's first female stars of the mbira. The mbira is much more than an instrument for making music. It's a statement of identity for the Shona people as a whole. Several hundred miles from the beer halls of Harare, the waters of the Zambezi descend from the Victoria Falls. The falls are known as the smoke that thunders by the Tonga people who live in the Zambezi Valley. The funeral celebrations of the Tonga are thousands of years old, using animal horns and skins, and now any other instruments they can lay their hands on. The Tonga are a marginalized people who don't share in most of the world's material benefits. For that reason, perhaps, they have preserved musical rituals lost elsewhere. Groups of male musicians compete for the women of the village, and the victors will be those who can attract the largest numbers. To surprise, to decorate and entertain, both musically and physically, are the aims of each group of male performers, and the winners will be judged by the size of their female following.
Actually, the women are united. The 4N group, as long they are good in drumming, they are good in blowing, and they are good in action. If the action does invite more women and does interest women, then they flock to that group and start dancing. Depending on are they good in making songs very fast, or there is somebody who have committed something which others don't like, or something which is unusual, or a fun thing, and you can start singing me when I've done something unusual.
Funeral celebrations are one of the earliest surviving examples of improvisation being valued as a skill. The improvisers are believed to be more exciting, more adaptive, and so they are valued above all their competitors. Whatever the style of music, improvisation has always been influential. It's part of the growth of every contemporary music, helping new technologies become tools of creativity. In a half-demolished school block on the Lower East Side of New York, there's a house party.
Got the momentum in your body, you know, just flow with it.
And we don't do the same thing. This is our particular show. No, we don't do that.
Trying to get the people
we try to get people to do it. When we get on stage,
it.
when it's time for the show, as soon as we get on stage, it's like, it's just what we feel. It's what we feel. Coming from the heart. Just like one of the songs from the album, coming from the heart. Come straight from the heart when you do it. Because if you don't come from the heart, then the people, it's going to show towards the crowd. The people feel they was cheated. You see? spotlight hits the stage. So everything's from the heart. The scratch is from the heart. You feel that? It's not no particular, I'm going to make it sound like this, or I'm going to say this specifically.
It's all originality.
It's all originality. Depends on how the house is. If the house is real hype, then we got something new coming out the sleeves of rock 'em. If the crowd is dead, then we got to come out of the closet with something that's going to rock 'em. It's premeditated. Nothing's 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 premeditated.